Welcome to Tansson TV Plus. I'm Brandon,
And I'm Mom.
and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yep, thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, we always love doing this. And Mom, how are you doing today?
I am doing fine, Brandon. How are you doing?
All is well here. And Mom, today is the day.
Yes, it is. We are going to discuss the last two episodes of The Connors.
Yes, it's hard to believe that the series finale has already happened this past Wednesday, but nevertheless, we're excited to discuss these final two episodes with you all.
Yes, we are. And the first two episodes and the last two episodes are, and this is number 111, Exercise Bands, Money Plans, and Faraway Lands. And then we have number 112, The Truck Stops Here.
Yeah, certainly a lot to cover, but I believe that we're going to discuss this sort of all-inclusively, but we did want to speak about at least the different dimensions of these episodes.
Yep, we sure do. Go ahead, Brandon, start us off.
Yeah, so with this first one, as you mentioned, titled Exercise Bands, Money Plans, and Faraway Lands, it continues with our traditional Connors naming scheme of having numerous different subjects within the title. But arguably, I'd say that it focuses specifically on that third one.
Oh, yes, it does. It does. It does. Faraway Lands actually refers to Mark. The series did put some closure to Mark. He was the one, to me, the outstanding. There were two outstanding storylines. He was one of them. Mark, of course, as you know, became a hacker and an illegal hacker, and so Mark has a new job, and it is a job that is out of town, and so he is forced to move away in order to obtain this goal of his. And so he does have to make amends with his mom, which of course doesn't take place until like the very end. But the family is happy for him that he does find a new job and that he is no longer hacking for a living.
Yeah, and I like that this episode is able to, like you said, provide that closure for Mark's hacking storyline and, all of the illegalness of it, and that Jackie's the one that's able to help him, even if it is largely sort of off screen with a on screen mention. But I like that we're able to give some closure to it and not overcomplicate it.
Yeah, actually, I'm very happy too.
Yeah, I could have easily have seen this become a whole big deal that could have encompassed these two episodes, and truly there's not time for that. So I'm glad that they were able to make it clean and simple while truly devoting essentially an episode to Mark, because he deserved
Yeah,
it.
yeah, he did deserve it, and I'm so happy they did that.
Yeah, and I definitely want to continue speaking about that in a little bit, but I did want to hit those other two subjects as well.
All right, Brandon, which is the next one that you want to hit?
Yeah, so the first one, exercise bands. Unlike many of these episodes that usually at least have a couple scenes per storylines, this one only had the exercise bands for one single scene in this episode.
Yes, as we have discussed all season, Jackie wants to go back onto the police force, and this was Jackie's way of doing some sort of exercising. But she wasn't just exercising alone; she was exercising with Louise, and so I thought it was a nice way to have them kind of bond together. Even though Jackie was not successful using these exercise bands, it was nice to see them both kind of to both speak and have a conversation.
Yeah, it definitely was, and I thought it was such a enjoyable scene. Louise is just trying to get some peace and quiet and deal with her own problems, but nope, Jackie has to add in hers.
Yeah, Jackie's always there to kind of add to everyone's problems.
Absolutely. But I will say that we do get a little bit of a Louise storyline in this, or at least the start of it.
Yeah, tell us about it, Brad.
Yeah, so Louise is kind of not necessarily miffed, but I suppose frustrated that about the constant mentions of Roseanne. Not per se that she is bothered by it, but more so that she just feels sort of out of place in the family, that she doesn't really belong, but that she understands and she gets it. But she's trying to figure out that balance between being a part of the family, but also respecting what has been.
Yeah, and I thought they did that nicely by explaining that because I can imagine they talk about Roseanne all the time on the show, how the character itself must have felt. And so it was nice to see that they actually did tackle that subject and they eased into it nicely.
Yeah, I definitely liked the way that they handled that. And as far as money plans, we're now shifting gears to Becky.
Yeah, which is actually very nice because to me this is a bit of a hangover that was left there from the original Roseanne show, in which when Becky went off to get married, she was not able to go to college. She took some classes here and there because they did work that into the plot, but she on a regular basis was not able to go to school, and she always was one that was perceived as being pretty broke. And so it was nice to see that they have made her go full circle. She now has her degrees, and she does have a very successful job. I mean, she's looking to buy a car. She's just looking. She's busy spending money.
Yeah, and at the same time, her and Tyler decide to commingle their money.
Yeah, they did decide to do that. Which I guess if the series were going to move forward, would have been pretty interesting. But but yes, they decided to do that.
Yeah, and not only that, but her and Tyler have different ideas as to what they were going to do with the money. Becky decided to go flat out buy a new truck, but then decided not to. But decided to test drive it to not return it. Nevertheless, though, Becky may or may not have a legal truck, but Tyler wanted to have used the money for a new house for them.
Yeah, so you're correct. They have different perspectives on how to use the money, but I think in essence it comes down to the fact that Becky does have money, and I think that was the plot point that they were trying to make on this in this take.
Yeah, and something that I kind of like within this is that we didn't force oh, we're moving out sort of plot, but we left it where us as the audience know that it's something that is being considered and that they're both interested. It's just that we're not there. Because I feel like so many times for these series finales that I think one of the biggest tropes is that we're all moving out plot. And I like that they didn't really go that route, but nevertheless set up seeds to show the audience that, yeah, that's something they might want to do in the future one day.
Yeah, I really like that too.
But yeah, but going back to what we were saying, though, I'm so glad that for the Faraway Lands plot that we did focus on Mark, because I would have felt that his storyline would have been shortchanged had they just uh, given him a third of an episode. So I'm glad that a majority of this episode was dedicated to him, and he did reflect on his personal growth throughout the entire revival on it.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Yeah, and I like that he was able to have that conversation with Darlene, and as unfortunate as it is that we didn't get to see his big going away party that Darlene did not attend, a part of me also believes that it may have been for the best because we're able to imagine what that would have been like.
Yeah, and actually, I wouldn't have liked to have seen that party without Darlene there. So I'm glad they kind of left that to your imagination. But it did show that the rest of the family was supportive of him, and it was just his mother he had to kind of bring on his side.
Yeah, and I will say I would have loved for Ben to have been in this episode, so I'm just going to use my imagination to believe that he was at that party.
Yes, yeah,
And Mom, I know, like I said, we're going to speak about the episodes overall, yeah, sort of as one. So are you ready to move on to the truck stops here?
I sure am, Brandon.
Yeah, so this is a pretty big episode for the series. Not only is it the series finale, but we still have quite a bit of plot, especially in terms of Darlene, to have covered in one episode.
Yeah, we did, and I'm kind of glad that they kind of let Darlene be the focus on this episode. Is really Darlene and Dan, and so I'm glad that they were able to let both of them be the focus on those episodes. And so far for Darlene, she of course is having problems with Ben. She doesn't see him, and that's really her ultimate problem. And so she does go back to the bar where she is meeting her friend on a regular basis, as she kind of realizes that he wants to go a little differently in their friendship per se. And Darlene does not want to do that. She really wants to be with Ben, and so they are able to rectify it later.
Yeah, and I like that them rectifying it actually very much includes both Becky and Harris, and I feel that that was so important because we've seen both of them repeatedly, both for Becky in both series, being at odds with Darlene. So I like that they're both working together to make sure that her and that Darlene and Ben stick together at the very least, that it doesn't end out in this way.
Yeah, I like that they were there to kind of, because they wanted Darlene to be happy, and then especially for Harris, because it may have been alluding to David. Also, they never said David's name in the episode, but for Harris to come around and say this is a good person for my mother, even though she may not have stated it, but by having her there, kind of alludes to that also.
Yeah, and I like it that doesn't per se feel forced. In fact, Harris, I think, even makes a mention. It's like, I don't want her to lose Ben. I finally got used to him.
Yeah, I did get a kick out of that.
Yeah, and I like that they didn't make this into a whole Darlene cheats, the marriage breaks up thing, because we've seen this so many times in the series alone that to end the series like that, although it would have been, I suppose, poetic because it's happened throughout the whole series, but I'd like to think that they have grown, and I'm glad they have.
Yeah, actually, same here, Brandon. I'm glad that they let them both be happy.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we didn't see Chad past the scene where he went after Darlene, just because I felt it would have taken away from the message of it that Darlene never had any interest of, cheating on Ben, that she was just distraught, but communication.
Yes, yes. Well, and we did see Darling go straight home, which was nice to see.
Yeah, and I will say that within this episode, and even within the previous one, while it may have touched on more serious topics, I will say that it felt more comedic in than most of the season has.
Yeah, because one of the things we've talked about too is that this season so far, although it had its moments, was not funny, funny. But I guess in a way to wrap things up, they just kind of needed to bring all these storylines together.
Yeah, they really did. And that really takes us in part to the Dan storyline.
Yes, ultimately, Dan was persuaded, I should say, by his daughters and Jackie to kind of go after the company in regards to the opioid drugs that Roseanne was taking, and he did go after her, and he did win some money. It was not a significant amount of money, but he did win some money, and so I guess it was nice to show that he did win a little bit of money, but at the same time, it was showing that that wasn't everything, and that at least they still had each other at the end.
Yeah, and Mom, what do you think about that sort of? I'm not going to say twist because I'm sure that we probably have all felt this is the outcome it was going to have. But like, what were your thoughts about this?
Are you referring to the amount of money he received?
Yeah, the amount of money received, and that we did actually end, with the deposition having completed, and we got the check, and now it's just $700.
Well, I think the fact that it's completed is the thing because there was never really a closure on Roseanne's storyline, and so they just knew that she was taking drugs, and they kind of knew where she was getting it from. But think this just gave some complete closure to it, so they could finally end that portion of it. And then as for the amount, it really didn't surprise me when he didn't open it at home. I knew it was going to be. I figured it would be a smaller amount, so they gave him just enough to, like I said, to show the company gave a little something toward it.
Yeah, and I feel that, as odd as it sounds, that this was almost a right decision for the show because it shows that money is not everything when it comes to his family. It was about the comedian who, the Connors are as people, who Roseanne was as a character. So I like that they're able to still honor that they weren't trying to say, oh, so what? That's like, well, she gave so much more than just $700 was worth.
Yeah, and then on the other side, Roseanne, the show actually already has. They already did the millionaire storyline, and so I'm kind of happy that they ended it where they are just, a family together.
That is so true. And I will say that they are much better off than where they were earlier. I mean, Dan's paid off the mortgage, a season and a half ago, and they are in a better place financially.
Yes, yes. And Dan's retired, which is nice. So yes, I think they left that in a good way.
Yeah. But Jackie, on the other hand, she has a new job.
Yeah, Jackie's a police officer, which is quite scary. But yeah, Jackie's a police officer again, and when she on the Roseanne show, I did like it when she was a police officer. So, but I thought it was interesting they brought up that full circle for her to have her come back as a police officer.
Yeah, I certainly love that. And considering that she's had numerous careers, throughout her time on Roseanne and then the Connors, that I think arguably, aside from her mentioning that she's Lanford's leading life coach, this is the other career that she's mentioned the most. So I thought it was fitting that they ended with that. And even the first episode of Roseanne season 10, the revival, the first mention really of Jackie was a picture of her as a police officer. So I thought that was a great full circle moment.
Yeah, it is a full circle moment.
And yeah, and I just really like that they were able to conclude in a way. And I know that they said a long time ago that they didn't want to necessarily pull out the normal stops of a series finale, like a change everything finale, that they wanted to be more grounded than that. And with that being considered, I personally feel that they did the best they could do with 6 episodes. And I think these final 2 episodes truly were the best conclusion they could have done at this point.
I did too. I like that they ended with a good night. I mean, it was just a regular day for them, and so they just said they see each other the next day, which is what they were doing on the series, regardless. So I like that they were showing that their same lifestyle, or they're saying that they were going to remain the same.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is really the best way that they could have ended it. Everyone is getting a relatively happy ending. It may not be the ending the characters would have wanted, but I'm sure they would have liked a few more millions. But nevertheless, though, with that $700, they were able to get that pizza party they wanted. But to reaffirm their commitment as a family, and I thought it was a really nice way of doing it. It was simple. It wasn't overly complicated, but I'm sure there certainly were things that, if there was more time, that we would have liked to have seen, though.
Yeah, and I'm hoping for $700 they had more than one pizza party. But yeah,
Yeah, that's expensive. That would be some really expensive pizza.
yeah, yeah. Brandon, was there anything you wish had happened differently?
So I have two answers to that. So I'm gonna first start off. I'm gonna give my answer now. I'd like to hear yours for what would you
Okay,
have liked to seen in this finale that wasn't included, and then I'd
okay,
like to say for the season overall.
okay.
So for the episode, I would have liked to have seen two things. That being a mention to DJ and his family. One, because of course DJ was a part of the original series of Roseanne and of the Connors, and so I would have liked to have seen acknowledgement of that, and even his daughter Mary and wife Gina. I mean, they were part of the series when it first began, so I thought that they would at least get a mention or even a nod, not by name, but we didn't really see that. We did get them in a flashback. Well, to get DJ in a flashback, but
Hmm.
I would have liked to have at least seen a mention, a phone call, or even a off-screen mention.
Yeah, same here. And what is your other thing, Brandon?
So the other thing, before I get into to your thoughts, is I would have liked to have seen Beverly Rose in this episode.
Hmm. Totally agree. That was, to me, a mistake on their behalf by not including Beverly Rose.
Absolutely. And Mom, was there anything else that you wanted to have seen within these final 2 episodes?
Yeah, actually, I wanted Harris and Mark actually to have a scene together. I noticed that they were not in for the last 6 episodes were not in any scenes together at all, and so I would have liked to have seen they weren't even in the same episodes. I would have liked to have seen them have one scene together, and I think that would have been appropriate for them being brother and sister if they had actually had them have some sort of moment. Together. I agree with you about DJ. I would have loved to see DJ, even if it was a phone call that came in to acknowledge that he did exist. Um, but we didn't have that. And like you said, with Beverly Rose, also, I would have liked to see her acknowledged as well. They did acknowledge, the grandmother. So I was happy to see that they did acknowledge, that Jackie's mom. But I wish they had acknowledged the others.
Yeah, I definitely appreciated the reference to Grandma Bev. I thought that was very appropriate and said in a very Jackie fashion. So I like that, but I definitely fully agree that we should have seen them. And even if they couldn't have had per se the actors for Mark and Harris together, I would have liked to have seen even if there's an acknowledgement that they were at least have been speaking at some point, and so at least Mark got an acknowledgement in the episodes he wasn't there. But I don't know if it was the other way around for Harris, though. I don't know if Harris got any acknowledgement on the episode she wasn't there.
Yeah, and I don't think so, but yeah, it would. I think it just would have been nice to have them have at least one scene together.
Yeah, and I'm curious as to if there was a scheduling difficulty. Main reason as to why I said that is because the first episode that they showed was not said to have been recorded in front of a live studio audience, but the second one was. And I think it's been the Mark episodes that have not been.
And I think we both caught that they tended to be the Mark episodes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why I said there's a scheduling issue or whatever, but I'm at least glad that they didn't try to rush any of the storylines per se. I mean, as more than it would have been since it's only 6 episodes.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
But I did want to ask too. So, had the season been longer and at least had 13 episodes, or at least 10, and not just 6? Yeah, is there anything that you would have liked to have seen if we had more time or more acknowledgments?
Well, actually, I would have liked to have them explore Harris a little bit because we've given Harris a new boyfriend, and I like the way they introduced him, and I liked him in there. And so I would have liked to have seen them explore that just a little bit, or at least give another episode to Harris. And then also, we've got this magazine that, that Ben has been working on, and I would have loved to have seen them kind of explore that a little bit and to show that it was successful. I'm not quite sure why he's spending the night at the office, but I would have liked to have seen them kind of explore that a little further also. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing, Louise. Louise is there. We know that she's on a school board, and so I would have liked to have seen them show that she is actually, doing something with the school board.
Yeah, I would say that the Louise one probably bothers me the most because we spent a lot of time in season 6 speaking about getting her elected to the school board, and then as soon as we find out that she won the election, I think then Ben's hardware store burns down. We never mentioned it again. So I kind of would have at least liked an acknowledgement, or even if she was dressed up as if she just came back from a board meeting, something that would have acknowledged that in any capacity.
Yeah, that would have been nice to see.
Yeah, and in a longer season, I would have also have liked to have checked in on some of the recurring characters, especially those that have come back from the original Roseanne. Like I think about Chuck, for instance.
Yeah, that's true. There were quite a few characters that came back from the original series that did come in sporadically during the Connors, and I would have liked to see them kind of close them out, or at least give them an ending scene. They could have had a scene with them, playing poker together or something. That's what Dan did most of the time.
Yeah, or even if you're not able to physically have them there, even just like pictures on the wall. And I do know that the Connors in their house, they have pictures of past episodes and and older pictures of the cast members, which I always love and appreciate that they kept that there. And so yeah, even if they had just zoomed into to those a little to see the years pass, yeah, some sort of acknowledgement of that. But I understand though that in 6 episodes, there's only but so much you can really squeeze in.
Yep, very true, Brandon.
But mom, is there anything else that you wanted to mention overall for these final 2 episodes, or for season 7, or even the Connors as a whole?
No, actually, I was so glad that we watched this. You mentioned that you kind of wish they'd done this in 3 different episodes, meaning like, two of them for 3 different days, I should say. And so that would have been 6 episodes over a 3 day time period. And I think that would have been nice. It would have showed the continuity all the way through. And it probably would have looked more so like a long movie, per se. But I did like the way they concluded. I like that they didn't really leave anything hanging, and that was my worry because they had so much hanging left over, especially after the first couple episodes that they aired. And so, but I did like that they were able to bring it all together really quickly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was very worried at the beginning of this season, seeing how many plots they had to resolve, not just from the previous episodes, especially the big Mark issue, but with the hacking. But then that they kept adding plots, and so, but yet having seen the show, I know and trust the writers to do what they need to do to end the series. It was just the matter of you know time is running out.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that was my biggest thing. It was just I probably would have. watched it in 3 different segments, and that would have been really nice.
Yeah, but nevertheless, even for these 5 weeks, I will say that it's been nice to see the Connors and to see them as normal episodes, and it feels I don't know, it feels weird. Not that there hasn't been a comedy block on ABC in a moment, because there has, but it definitely felt refreshing to see the Connors back on screen.
It did. And for someone who watched all the original, and then moved on to the Connors, it was nice to see the continuity and to kind of watch as the characters did progress throughout the years.
Yeah, and I will give a little bit of background for the audience tuning in that ahead of the finale, I did actually go back to watch the very first episode of Roseanne, the original alongside the original series finale into that Goodnight, the season 10 revival premiere, the first 2 episodes, the end of that alongside the beginning of the Connor. So lots of episodes, but it's it's interesting because these final 2 episodes feel very much in line with the beginning of this revival and the beginning of the original Roseanne.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Good to know. I know we talked a little bit about that offline. So,
Yeah, we definitely have. And I will say, just as a little bookending note, is both the series revival and Roseanne season 10 and the final episode, The Connors, uh, started and ended with the iconic couch.
yes, yeah, yes. It is iconic.
But yeah, and I did want to, even though we don't have proper connections, I did want to make a quick note about the writers of the final episode.
All right. What do you want to say about them, Brandon?
So the 2 writers of the final episode are both some of the executive producers of the Connors that helped develop the series, but both of them were also producers on season 5 of the original Roseanne.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Good to know. And Brand, just like I've done before, I did rate this episode, 1 through 5, 5 being the highest. I actually gave them fours. And I did that because, once more, these episodes weren't funny, but they were good episodes. And so I think it just ended on a solid 4 for me. What about you, Brand?
Oh, easily a solid 4, and I believe that these 2 are probably the strongest of this final season. It's not my favorite season. I believe that one will go to season 5 for me, which is the only season of the Connors that made it to 22 full episodes. But nevertheless, I did enjoy what was able to be accomplished within these final 2 episodes, resolving a lot of plot without feeling like the time's running out per se.
Yeah, I agree totally. Agree totally. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss, Brandon?
No, I just want to say that this has been such a good run. I mean, this series is ended with 112 episodes overall. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It really is incredible. There are very few shows that do that now.
Yeah, and to think a continuation show of a revival, which doesn't even include Roseanne season 10, which had 9 episodes. Ironic that revival started with a 9 episode, temporary show, and then here you are ending out 7 seasons later with 6 episodes.
Yeah, that it is. I'm just happy the networks let them actually end the show, and to kind of let the audiences see, that the Connors were going to continue on, even though we won't be there to see them.
Absolutely. And Mom, I actually did have one note for you.
Okay, what's that, Brandon?
Okay, so I did my best to actually do the math as to how many episodes these characters showed up in The Connors.
Okay,
And for the most part, I'm just speaking about the main cast members, and then I'm going to add in Louise.
okay.
Are you ready?
I am ready, Brandon.
Okay. So we have for every episode, all 112. We have Dan, Jackie, and Darlene. Those are the only 3 to have been in all 112 episodes.
Okay,
And then under that, we have Becky at only having missed 1 episode at 111.
okay.
And then, to the best of my knowledge, Harris has been 101.
Oh, that's scary because I thought she missed many more. many more than that, but okay.
I thought so too, but like I said, I'm doing my best with the math and what's everything's online. But Ben has been in 81 episodes.
And I never would have thought he was in that many.
Well, I do know that he became a series regular in season 3.
Okay.
Let's see, and then Mark was in 75.
Okay. And I didn't know Mark missed that many.
I didn't either. And then Mary was in 46.
Okay. That sounds right.
And then DJ is unfortunately only in 36.
Wow. Poor DJ.
Gina was in 11.
Okay.
But meanwhile, Louise was in, any guesses?
50?
54.
Wow. And we talked about Louise, and I didn't realize how many episodes she was in at the beginning of the series. It wasn't until I rewatched some of the earlier episodes that I realized that she was there.
Yeah, and so it truly is, yeah, I mean, so interesting. But the series, if you combine it with Roseanne, both the original run and the revived run, has a total of 343 episodes between the two series.
That is amazing. That's really amazing.
But yeah, but truly a legacy show. But Mom, I always love doing this with you, and I'm so glad to have had this discussion.
Yep, same here, Brandon. Same here. And we thank you, everybody, for watching.
Yes, we definitely do. And Mom, I can't believe that we discussed all 6 episodes of this final season as they came out.
I know that I am shocked that we have done this too, Brandon. But it was so much fun, and especially doing this so quickly. We don't normally turn things around this quickly, and so it was very nice and very challenging to be able to do this.
Absolutely.
Yes. So thank everybody for watching today.
Yeah, we definitely do.
All right, and we'll see you next time.
Have a great day.
Bye bye.